Boy, things are shifting fast in our world, and so does the moon. Learn what each lunar phase means in astrological interpretation from the classic Book of the Moon audiobook by Stephen Forrest, narrated by me. Loaded with valuable information about the moon itself and how to apply it. There's a direct link on High Timeline Books or get it from Audible or Apple Books. We started recording this episode just to intend to make it answering a listener question, and it would be about 20 minutes like we normally do, and we stumbled onto a treasure. And I wanted to leave it in its entirety so that you could hear how Robert works through a chart. You are about to hear some amazing information, and this is an episode that even if you're listening in your car while you're driving, you are probably going to want to go back and listen with notepad, paper, pen, coffee, tea, whatever you like to drink while you're just taking notes. And you're going to learn an amazing interpretative style of astrology that I doubt you're going to hear anyplace else. So with that, let's roll this episode. Welcome to the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thomas Miller. And hey, Robert.
Yes?
One thing when we met doing these Kepler Practicum classes, we have only heard from one person. Kim has been in touch with us several times. But do you remember Lisa from the horary classes?
Not only do I remember her, but I'm very honored to say that she's also a client of mine.
Ah, that's awesome. Well, she brings a question to the table for us.
Hi, Thomas and Robert. I remember you both from Kepler days. I was in the horary practicum class. I have a question. I know that you can see past lives in a chart. Can you see possible future incarnations?
Wow, Lisa, thank you very much for this question, and it's great to hear from you on these podcasts as well. And the answer is yes, you can. And it's very valuable because when you know where to look in a horoscope for both past lives and future lives, you can consciously see what future life you are building toward in this life. So it gives you a tremendous insight. And there are two places to look for these things. The old classic way is the present life is shown at the first house. And in both techniques, this is true. The angular houses in the birth chart rule the present. The succedent houses in the birth chart rule the future. The cadent houses rule the past. Now, the old classic technique for looking at past lives, you look at the house behind the ascendant for the past life, leading up to the present life in the first house, and then you look to the second house in the natal chart as the future life leading out of this present life. And that's a valid technique. But the more esoteric and deeper technique is to use the triads. Now, what are those? There is the ascendant triad. This applies to any house. There's a descendant triad. You can look at the 8th house, and it has a triad. But for past lives and future lives, this is what I do. And this is from Mark Edmund Jones, among others. And this is the more esoteric technique. The ascendant is the present life. The 9th house is the distant past that leads up to the present life. And the 5th house is the future life that arises out of the present life. Now, if you think about, and I love this phrase, the 5th house is the projection of self into the future. Now, one way to do that is to have biological children. They keep the lineage going. Another way to do it is to have figurative children through creativity, through art, through writing a book, producing a movie, doing a painting, or whatever, creative children. But bear in mind this ascendant triad and study the 9th house as the past life. And you do this by mentally placing the 9th house on the first cusp and then reading it like you would any other chart. And you'll get incredible information. I just had a client 2 days ago who wanted to do this. And I remember telling her that she had been a male in many lifetimes, but particularly in the more let's say, more adjacent or recent lifetime. She was a very prominent figure in the military, a general. And the minute I said the word general, she started laughing. She said, "Oh my God, my girlfriends call me the general because I'm the," and she went on and on about this general thing. So I was just reading the chart by mentally placing her ninth house on the first house and then reading that just like an ordinary chart. But that ninth house is the past life preparation that leads to this life. For example, I was telling her that because she had been a general and had seen a lot of war as a man, she's very, I said to her, "You're very anti-war in this life, and you wanted to be a woman in this life, but you wanted to be a strong woman." And it made perfect sense to her. Then you can look to the fifth house in the natal chart to see what the future life, the themes are, the sign on the fifth cusp, the planet that rules that sign, the planet's sign that it's in and aspects to it, and so on. And it's a fascinating study. And of course, I've done it with myself. I didn't know anything about astrology when I started, but by George, my fifth house has absolutely shaped very much of this life. And as I am approaching death, much closer to it now than I was 60 years ago, I can absolutely see how I'm shaping a future life, probably as a woman, because I have Taurus on that house, my fifth house, female sign. I'm just giving you an example of how to work with this. Venus rules Taurus. Venus is a female planet. That's 2 for female. Venus is in Scorpio, a female sign. That's 3 for female. So I can see where I might reincarnate as a woman, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the technique, Lisa, for doing it. And I hope all of you will try and explore it because it's fascinating to really consciously see where you are coming from in a past life leading up to this life at the first house and where you're going in the fifth house in the natal chart.
All right, this is excellent. And I will put Robert's chart up, and I'm going to put my chart up. And, you know, one of the side benefits that I get from doing what I do and spending all that time editing this stuff is sometimes I get a reading out of it. So I put my chart up, and I'm curious because people kind of know my story as well as yours. So if you would pick this apart too, and let's give them a couple of examples.
Well, I hope that you and I know each other in a future life. We're both apparently going to be women.
Well, we'll have a tea club then, a tea, group.
Tea party.
Yeah, well.
Because if you look at your fifth house, you have Libra there. It's a male sign. It's ruled by, I'm keeping track here, it's a male sign. It's ruled by Venus, a female planet, in Virgo, a female sign. In the fifth house, you have Mars, a male planet. It's in Scorpio, a female sign. You have Neptune, a female planet in a female sign. You have the Sun, a male planet in a female sign. That's 5 for female and 3 for male. So that's your future life, the fifth. And you can, go into much depth about it. Past life, you look to the ninth. Now, let's look at your present life at the first house. With Gemini rising, what does Gemini rule? Communications, the communications industry, if you will, and networking, connecting, putting people together with ideas through communications. That's this life. The ninth house is your past life, where you find Aquarius, so you know that in the past life you were something of an inventor, very much your own man. It's, again, a male sign, and it's got 2 planets ruling Aquarius. Saturn is the old Chaldean ruler. And that's a female planet and a female sign. But Uranus is the contemporary ruler of Aquarius. Aquarius itself is a male and masculine sign. And Uranus is a masculine planet in a masculine sign of Leo. So you were probably a male in this past life. And you can take them both, Saturn and Uranus. If you turn that ninth house to be on your first house, then you see that for a career in this past life, your 10th house had Mercury and Jupiter in Sagittarius. So you know that travel was a big part of this life, and also teaching. But again, communications with Mercury and Jupiter in Sagittarius. So this is an educator in a past life who traveled, and you were something of an explorer as well, and a scientist. So now you're beginning to get a look at the combination of travel, science, exploration, communication. So this is a very interesting past life. With Uranus in Leo, you were probably somebody, I don't know that you were Charles Darwin, but someone like that, who sacrificed your marital life to explore around the world scientifically. So you were gone a lot. And it probably destroyed your wife, not literally, but you were never home long enough for her to get the feeling of commitment and love on a daily basis. The same was true with children. If you look at the ninth house with Aquarius there, and you're an explorer, children are ruled by the fifth from the ninth. You had children because you got the part of fortune in Cancer and you loved them dearly, but you were gone a lot. And if you look, you can see the part of fortune squares your nodal axis, for example. So your scientific career, and let's face it, in those days, you could get stuck, like many explorers did, in some Arctic region or some threatening region where the ship sank, or you were imprisoned by a tribe or that sort of thing. But you were away a lot. So in this life, look at the themes of being distant and away from children, and look at the repercussions out of the past life experience. Children in this life, which are Mars, Neptune, and the Sun in Scorpio, have carried over their resentment of you for being gone. They admired you for your work, but they never got the intimacy on a day-to-day basis because your work was more important to you than anything. The explorations and the scientific and writing about them and teaching about them. So you begin to see how to read these things.
I had somebody just the other day ask about this very thing. Almost the unfairness, if you will, as we think about it in our modern culture, of that being dragged forward. It's like, wait a minute, you mean I'm having to deal with something that I can't even control back then? But yet, and I know, and it happened with a past relationship as well, who held resentment for something that happened in a past life.
Well, I think that people sometimes, and maybe often, will reincarnate people who've had a very intense experience together in a past life, and maybe it ended badly. They will reincarnate in the same time and space to come together again to see if they can resolve the bad ending in the previous life. I've done that, and I was not able to in this life either. So you can have a past tragic, if you want to call it that, tragic love that you re-encounter in this life, both of you. And it's recognized because these are the most intense relationships you'll ever have. And they can also be the most passionate. But it's the intensity of them that carries over from a past life, unlike maybe another relationship in this life that is not karmic. You haven't known each other before. It won't be as deeply intense or transformative as reconnecting with a karmic relationship. Now, I happen to have Saturn on my 7th house of marriage. So there it is. Basically, I've had nothing but karmic relationships too, in particular.
Do you think we have more than we realize?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. These can be relationships of friendship. I wouldn't be surprised if you and I had I haven't thought about this or studied it, but that you and I have had some kind of past life connection, and probably professionally. Because as I've joked with you, this partnership is the marriage I've been waiting for all my life. We don't live together. There's no sex. There's no hairs in the sink, none of that. It's just a great business relationship, and a very deep one, because the thing that the glue that binds us together is astrology.
And it was effortless.
And totally effortless.
Went right into it. I mean, we just picked up, you know, two old dogs that know how to talk into a microphone, I guess. I don't know. But
and you also have Saturn in your 7th.
Yeah. Yeah, don't remind me. I want to ask you about I want to ask you about the kid thing, because I think this is an interesting thread. Since we have my chart as an example, and we're talking about Lisa's question, how are we building the future, or can we see the future? Here's the 5th house with Libra on the cusp and Mars in tune, Mars, the Sun, and Neptune in Scorpio at 6 degrees. I mean, that's a scorpion with 3 tails is what that is. It's like, boom. So what kind of future life is this building from what we can tell where we are right now?
Well, it's interesting because you very well you have, what, 2 children?
Correct.
So you may very well, and they too, reincarnate together again to resolve what has gone on in this life. Now, with Scorpio in your house of children, and from what I think we all understand here, a lot of the animosity toward you has to do with religion. And that is very much a Neptunian and Scorpionic theme. I remember Linda Goodman, who quadruple Aries, and she used to shorthand everything. And she would say, oh, Scorpio, sex, death, and religion. Well, she was right. So it may not resolve in this life, although it could, because of the sextile that you have from Pluto and Virgo to those Scorpio planet. Scorpio is pretty final. And if it doesn't resolve in this life, and let's face it, Pluto is getting ready to go into Aquarius, where it will square Mars in tune.
Don't remind me.
And frankly, with the Mars, Neptune, Sun, and Scorpio in the 5th, just taken alone, that can indicate tragedies connected with children, emotional, if not physical or financial, such as an earthquake or something, but emotional tragedies. And Scorpio is one of these damn signs. It's so final. I mean, you read in the books about how Scorpio is all about getting revenge. I have Venus in Scorpio. I've never sought revenge. I just don't. But I do know that with me, when something is over, it is absolutely over. The person may as well be dead. I don't wish them ill, but I have nothing to do with them. And that works for me. And they in this life may treat you that same way, and emotionally. And this all has happened with transiting Uranus going through Taurus, opposite your house of children. And it's about to enter Gemini, where it will oppose your Mercury and Jupiter. But that too, Mercury and Jupiter in your chart square Pluto. And Pluto rules Scorpio, which is, again, going back to children in your chart because you have so much Scorpio in your 5th house. So with you are absolutely willing, and which I admire because I can't do this and don't want to do it. You are very willing to maintain lines of communication. So it falls on them to meet you on your own level and reestablish communication with you, but that's up to them. You're there.
Yeah.
And partly that's from a past life where you were not there.
Ah.
And in this life, you want to be there for them no matter what. So in a past life where there were maybe geographic chasms and distances between you and your children, in this life, there are emotional and spiritual chasms. You will always be there. And it wouldn't surprise me if when Uranus goes into Gemini and opposes your Jupiter and Mercury, now it will also square your Pluto, but still, there can be further communications. But Uranus opposite Mercury and Jupiter and square Pluto, the communications will tend to always be fraught and argumentative, because that's all tied up with security for them. And you're free from all of that, which is part of this life's karma for you with Mercury and Jupiter and Sag square Pluto. That's a sign of somebody who's going to break with their past traditional religious upbringing and find their own path to God or the all that is, which you've done.
Yeah, and it was unexpected, but it did happen. Can you see this current situation involving money and children, fifth house, in my natal birth chart from 65 years ago?
Yes, I do. And where I would look for, if you want to just, you say generally, my children collectively are ruled by the fifth house. And there's Scorpio, which is the other people's money sign. It's all about money. And here's Mars, Neptune, and the Sun. So there are secrets about money and hidden aspects about money. But your children's money, just as a collective, the two together, is their second house, which is your sixth. You follow me?
Absolutely. Derivative houses.
So your children's money is Mercury and Jupiter together in Sag. That's wills and estates, legal papers and inheritances. Square Pluto in Virgo. In your children's 11th house, the 11th from the 5th, that's their future. So that Pluto in Virgo, square the Mercury and Jupiter, and all of that connected with your children's money is pretty irrevocable. And that's the secret of Neptune in the 5th of your children. They are secretly codependent on the approval and acceptance of family and where they live and so on. So you're not. You're willing to break away from that and go your own way, which you've done. And look at it this way. You did it before. You were an explorer, a seeker of knowledge through travel and exploration. So you broke from the family, not deliberately. You didn't turn around and say to them, I'm going to break with you. But you followed your heart and your head and explored the world, whatever portions of it you did, to make discoveries at the cost of family intimacy, if you will.
All right, I want to jump track on another thing here.
Okay.
Let's take Lisa's question another generation forward. Can a parent see in their natal chart the life that their children are building in the future?
Well, if you want to look at the future life of the children, it is the 5th from the 5th. Your 5th house rules your children. Then you would look to the 5th from the 5th, which is Aquarius. And ironically, that ties into your past life as an explorer and a scientist. So believe it or not, what they are learning from you in this life, they're seeing. Our Father has chosen to go his own way in this life and to break from his traditional upbringing. And through his mind, Mercury and Jupiter and Sag, and his mental and intellectual and philosophical and spiritual explorations, he's moved out of the tribe. So they're seeing this. And they're seeing, well, our dad is very happy, and he's very successful, and he's a broadcaster and a communicator, and he's a metaphysician and a philosopher, and he knows a ton of people. He interacts with a ton of people from all walks of life because he's on an explorative track in this life. So they're absorbing all of that. And in their next life, which is Aquarius, the 5th from the 5th of children, their future life, they will be much more like you are in this life. They will break from their tribe, not in this life, because they're learning in this life what it means to conform to the tribe. but they're seeing through you another way to live, which is a nonconformist life. And they will become nonconformist in their future life because they will appreciate the freedom. And there's a price to be paid for that, just like there's a price to be paid for being independent and freedom loving. But everything costs something. Anything of value costs something. And it's more important for you to follow your own star, so to speak, and actualize those portions of yourself that are the most vital and interesting to you, which is to become a broadcaster, a communicator, and finally an astrologer.
Wow. What you've just heard, folks, is incredible. And one of the reasons I stayed with this was so that you could hear how Robert explained this in the way that he did, so that you could see not only how your own path is connecting to the future, but now you can jump to the generation of your children and see how you are influencing them for their future. This is absolutely amazing. And I know we could take it to your grandchildren if you wanted to keep going, but we've shown you the technique now of how you can do this with this kind of style of interpretation. So how you would do this is you would look at your natal fifth house and then go the fifth from that fifth house. So that's your natal ninth house, and then make that the first house of your children's future, and then go to the fifth house from that, which would be your natal first house, and you could read that as the next generation past your kids. I am truly blown away by this. And Robert, what I'm sensing from this is when you say that my kids, because of what's going on now, and even because of something I did in a lifetime I don't even know, will eventually find their own independence. Do you know how good that makes me feel about everything that I've gone through?
Because, well, I'm glad to hear that.
And even if my current brown eyes don't get to see it, future eyes might, and if not, at least they will on their soul level. If I can believe they will find their own independence in the future, then it has been worth it.
Well, let me tell you something else from this chart, Thomas. Your son in your fifth house is your children's father, graphically shown here. Your children of the fifth house. You as their father are the sun. And your sun in Scorpio sextiles Pluto. Now, Pluto is death and rebirth, but they have tremendous, on a deep, deep Plutonic level, tremendous respect for you and the work, Virgo, that you're doing. They can't voice it in this life, but they have tremendous respect for you on a very deep Plutonic unconscious level. And that will carry over into a future life.
I just had another thought on this. You have said in the past that the area in the chart where Scorpio touches, there can be an issue of maybe not physical death, but symbolic death in that area of our lives that is represented by that house. So here in my chart, we've established that because of the 3 planets in the fifth house being in Scorpio, that implies the characteristics of the fifth house are touched by that. We've discussed that. But also my natal sixth house is ruled by Scorpio, even though just for a few degrees. So using derivative houses, that would be my kids' second house, ironically, of the topic at hand, money, ruled by Scorpio. So would that same scorpionic issue apply to that area of their lives as well, being the derivative second house of money?
No, you're absolutely right. Where you see Scorpio, it is death and rebirth. So with children, you have already now experienced a figurative death, and that's got to be painful. And that's in your fifth house because the bulk of Scorpio is in the fifth of children. But you're absolutely right. Their second house of money is ruled by Scorpio. So they are likely to experience, figuratively, a loss in life because of this money. So you're absolutely right.
Okay. Well, see, I've taken a note or two as we've been doing these podcasts. Well, listen, thank you for this, and I sure hope that this encourages people who can see into this and have some interpretive skills. If you don't have interpretive skills, we have a couple of resources that might help you. First of all, one is this podcast, and it's absolutely free. And then we have the Fun Astrology 101 course that will get you a little bit fluent in speaking astrology and get you up to where you can synthesize things for yourself. And then if you want the master's level, we have Robert Glasscock's horary class. Those are both available right on the homepage of funastrology.com. Thank you so much for listening to this. I hope it has touched you and given you hope in your own situation as you can look not only at your future, but even your kids' future, and really helps give you some encouragement and confidence that this all does fit together in a beautiful tapestry. We'll see you next time on the Old Soul, New Soul Astrology Podcast. Thanks for listening.